It's a gonna rain, children. God's gonna send the water from Zion. He's gonna raise the heavens up higher. It's gonna rain. It's gonna rain. I said it's a gonna rain, children. God's gonna send the water from Zion. He's gonna raise the heavens up higher. It's gonna rain. It's gonna rain. Well, God got angry upon his throne. The angels in heaven, they began to moan. Said, go down, angels, stir up a flood. Blow out the sun and turn the moon into blood. Then come back, angels, and guard the door.
The Civil War officially ended in April of 1865 at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia, when General Lee surrendered to General Grant, handed over his sword, and it was all this kind of formal surrender of General Lee's army. That's the point when the history books basically say, yeah, the war was over, and when they began talking about how are we going to stick the country back together. And at that moment in 1865, what was going on in terms of Reconstruction in the South, in terms of how to bring some justice into the South, was really shaped by this, by Sherman's Special Field Order 15. Remember that General Sherman had been marching across Georgia. He came into Atlanta, and then he marched from Atlanta to Savannah, basically burning everything that he came across, destroying all of the infrastructure that he could. One of the things that he was destroying was their labor force, making sure that the Confederates didn't have the manpower that they needed to continue their economy. And the way that he ensured this was going to happen was through his Special Field Order 15, which was in all of the territory that he had marched through, so all across Georgia and then up the Atlantic coast. All of that land was seized from the original landholders. It was taken away from the Confederates and was supposed to be redistributed to the enslaved people in that area. So they were made free, and they were going to be given land in 40-acre parcels. So this is where the idea of 40 acres and a mule, the idea of what enslaved people thought they should get, what they expected to get after the war, was that they would get 40 acres of land to farm and that they would get a mule to farm it with. Sherman never said anything about a mule. That was just part of the mythology that developed. But he did say that every enslaved family should get 40 acres. So at this very moment of the war ending, there's tremendous optimism in the eastern part of the former Confederacy, because the language of the order gets lost in translation. So it's only the people near where Sherman has marched that are guaranteed to be given this land. But the idea spreads like wildfire across the South that everybody who was enslaved is going to get this land. And that's kind of the very beginning, the germ of the idea of reparations for slavery today, is this idea that enslaved people were promised 40 acres and a mule. They never got that 40 acres. They're still waiting. They need to get some compensation for all the torture and the hardship that they went through for all of those years. So this has tremendous staying power in the African American community of saying we, and rightfully so, saying that we deserve something for the trauma that we were put through. In actual fact, the Special Field Order was only in place for about a year. We'll talk about this in a few minutes. President Andrew Johnson pulled it back and said, no, I don't like that. We're not going to do that. And he gave the land back to the original owners. So immediately after the end of the war, April of 1865, land is being redistributed in the East, if only temporarily. At the same time, in the western part of the southern United States, people still didn't know they were free. And this is one of the things that I was shocked to learn. I had always kind of imagined that Lee surrendered, and then the war ended. You know, that seems to be the way it's written in the history books. He surrenders, that's the end. People were held in slavery in Texas until the middle of June in 1865. The landowners, the military, the people who were there knew that the war was over. They knew that the main army had surrendered. They knew that the enslaved people were covered by the 13th Amendment, that they were going to be freed, but they just didn't tell the enslaved people. So it was not until June 19th of 1865 that the Union military came into Texas, subdued the army that remained in Texas, and issued this General Order Number 3. And the General Order Number 3 says, as you can read it here, that people are free, that there is no more slavery in Texas. And that was the true end of slavery in the Confederacy. The end of the Civil War was here on June 19th. And that's a holiday that is commemorated largely in Texas now, but you also see it across the southern United States of Juneteenth. They didn't, I don't know why it's called Juneteenth. I think there was some confusion about what the actual date was, and so it just became known. We know it's in the Juneteenth somewhere, and it's kind of a cool phrase. What I find interesting about this general order, well, there are a couple things. One is that even though the white Southerners in Texas knew that their enslaved people had been freed, they just thought they could trick them, could not tell them, and they'd never find out that they had been freed. So the one thing is the willingness of the white Southerners to continue to oppress African Americans. The second piece is, even within this general order, it's saying there's no more slavery, but let's keep things just the way they are. The freedmen, as it says in the middle here, the freedmen are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts, and they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. Even as they are being freed, they're being told, just keep doing what you had been doing before. Continue to work in the cotton fields, continue to, run the cattle, or whatever your occupation was, continue to do those things. So even the people that are bringing freedom, even the people that are freeing the slaves, are not giving them anything new. They're not saying, like, now go run the country and go become tailors, or whatever your heart may desire. It's saying, yeah, sure, you're free, but you're also still a cotton laborer. You're also still doing this hard manual labor that no one else wants to do. So even freedom was not imagined by the leadership of the country as being anything more than a legal construct. It wasn't seen as being something that was truly free in the way that we think about freedom and liberty today.
Upon the window, they beat upon the door, saying, look at you, Noah, can you take on more? Noah said, I'm sorry, my friend, 'cause God's got the key and you can't get in. It's a-gonna rain, children. God's gonna send the water from Zion. He's gonna raise the heavens up higher. It's gonna rain. It's gonna rain.